welcome to my show. I'm Karla Adams. Today we are going to be talking about breaking generational patterns like a boss. So I'm so excited. So the big things I'm going to go over in this show is the way that we think, eat, and move. One of the most simplest things we can do in life is think, eat, and move. So having all three of those in line with what we believe and want to bring into our life is extremely powerful. So, and I'm going to go over that as it pertains towards women. I mean, men can probably use a little bit of these tips, but mostly I'm going to gear this towards women. But because we're all humans, we can some of these tips any human can benefit from. And at the end of this, I'm going to go over some exercise tips for women. Women need to train significantly different than men. So I'm going to be going over some of those tips at the end, and I'm going to actually invite you into my free 30-day challenge. So it's 30 days of clean eating, and you can join it absolutely free. Okay, I'm excited. Let's move in. So I've spent over 26 years doing custom exercise science and sports nutrition programs. I've worked with tons of women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s and helped them really revamp their whole body and nutrition and understand their own selves on clean eating and regular exercise. Okay, so women, so we like being, women are super, super different than men. And the number one thing that starts separating men from women is our hormones. Okay, men are testosterone based and females are estrogen based. And these hormones affect our thought process. They affect our how we need to exercise. They affect our personality. They affect how we do things and solve problems in life. So our hormones are super, super important, and understanding how to balance your own self and if your hormones are imbalanced or, just how your thoughts actually play a role in shifting your hormones or your hormones affecting your thoughts, okay? Because they go back and forth. Either your mind can affect your hormones or your hormones can affect your mind. So historically right now, we've got a lot of different shifts when it comes to hormones. And that's a super important thing to get in tune with. I'm going to get a little bit more in depth on the biological part of that in my next tip. But in this one, I'm going to talk mostly on the thoughts, okay? On how our hormones affect our thoughts and just some natural tendencies of women. Women tend to be caregivers historically in time, and just biologically, the way that we're made, we carry babies. And so we're meant to carry babies. So because of that estrogen and that whole baby process, it really starts shifting us into another kind of area in caregiving kind of mindset. When you see the egg, right? The sperm chases the egg, correct? So there's a lot of things that are biological about just a female. And really getting in tune with those, the flow of that lane will empower you to use that lane to the best of your advantage for just achieving your own goals. One of the things I mentioned in my past show is how important it is if you want to master something, if you want to get self-control at something, if you want to shift it, is to master everything in that lane, okay? When it comes to financial planning, we don't get to make up how money works at all, right? And there's a lot of things we don't get to make up. Like I'm sure you could write down a list and you say, I don't get to make up how this works. I don't get to make up how this works. You don't get to make up how your company works. There's a lot of things in the world we don't get to make up how it works. The only thing we get to do is master the flow of it, okay? So hormones or being feminine or just like who you biologically are is part of that, okay? In mastering it. And the more you master the natural laws that already occur there, the more you're actually going to get different things you want out of your life, okay? Including breaking any food pattern trends, okay? And we are genetics versus lifestyle, okay? So it might sound weird, but 100% our parents and our grandparents passed down different thought patterns and chemistry patterns, strengths and weaknesses in our body, okay? And we are 300 years into the processed food era, okay? So we have at least 3 or 4 generations of biological development around highly addictive chemicals that food chemists have come up with, or we are at least 200 years into thought process being passed down. I mean, how often have you learned something from your mother or learned something from your father, either from what that they said or something they did, you know? And a lot of times we actually learn behaviors like just through watching them. If you always saw your parents exercise, or if you always saw them eat clean, or if you always saw them, you know, go through the fast food restaurants or something like that, okay? So we pass these things down, okay? One of my books I mentioned in my last video was The Law of Recognition. This is a very powerful book. I would get it. It's a little, it's just got some one-liners in here, and it all references back to the Bible, which is a legal document, and it's considered a legal document, a historical document, and the longest genealogy on record. So just understanding how these different generational thoughts and biology start getting passed down really puts us in a strong position of recognition and understanding, and just of a viewpoint, right? Because it says it's bigger than us. It's bigger than what's happening in my current life right now. Even if you have some sort of food struggle or exercise struggle, and there's more food struggles than exercise struggles. And it really comes down to the chemistry of it, okay? How your hormones, and I would highly recommend going and finding a doctor to check your hormones if you have any of these symptoms. I would look into bioidenticals. They're bioidentically match human hormones. There's a lot of books out there by people talking about the regular ones, and they're driven from horse pee and all these different things, and women get very, very emotional around them. I've experienced that. I remember I went and when I first learned I had a hormone imbalance, because I have one, and my hormone imbalance can be identified just through looking at my childhood behavior. I actually have this really, really good book by a PhD on hormone balancing and bioidentical hormones. If you send me an email, I'll send you this for free. But it basically talks about adrenaline, okay? And adrenaline is a very, very common thing, but very, very under talked about, that affects all hormones. And especially with how fast-paced our society is getting, more people are dealing with this adrenaline issue, even men, okay? And it's really, I have it biologically, and it's really just from, I genetically don't produce a lot of progesterone. So if your body does not produce a lot of progesterone, it'll naturally start counterbalancing, because it's very efficient. The body tries to be efficient. Just like a company, if they have, you know, one of their departments don't show up, they're going to grab some other employees and try to still run the show and be efficient. Your body's efficient too. If it doesn't have its tools, it'll still try to function optimally anyways. But I learned I had my own hormone imbalance close to 10 years ago, and I didn't know this, but it's just because my body doesn't produce progesterone, which is a very, very common one, which is one of the ones I want to talk about today. But if you notice, if you feel like your hormones are out, or you're noticing that it's hard to reduce weight, or you have your emotions go up and down, or it just feels more difficult, if life just feels more difficult, that's the biggest symptom I knew I had when my hormones were out. I was doing all this exercise, I was doing all this nutrition, and I was just out there, like, you know, burning all the ends burning all these bridges at all ends, running 40 miles per week, training 3 days a week, and just doing. I didn't know that was from my hormone imbalance. You know, I have hyper attention deficit disorder, like, to the extreme degree. They used to always want to put me on all these Ritalin, all going through high school, and my mom used to tell the doctors, no more Ritalin, no more Ritalin. It was literally just a hormone imbalance. My progesterone was so low that my adrenaline went through the roof, and most type A personalities have this, okay? The attorneys, the doctors, the entrepreneurs, and it's usually genetic or it gets created from an extreme lifestyle, okay? And I went 100% into extreme lifestyle. And that all, and it's kind of like the adrenaline works hand in hand. So my adrenaline actually helped me succeed a lot in life, but it also made certain things more difficult. And that's the biggest thing that starts coming in with the hormones. Okay, so if life just feels more difficult, you probably want to get checked with the hormones. So another thing too, and hormone kind of works. So stress and cortisol, all of these things usually work together and really making it just a little bit more difficult for somebody. But we really just remember, breaking generational patterns is not only looking at the mental thoughts to change, but it's also looking at the chemistry, because there are real things in the chemistry that make it extremely difficult. Like you have to do 10 extra things compared to maybe somebody else, another woman only does 5, right? And that's actually exactly what happens. And I can have a complete testimony of that most of my life. You know, a complete entrepreneur, type A personality. I'm always doing, you know, I've eaten clean my whole life, exercise. You know, if you looked at my profile, there's all these just like real exciting things going on. Part of that, and yes, part of that was just my desire to do positive things. I'm a positive person in my life, but it's on a real extreme level, in part because of a progesterone deficiency, which threw me into high amounts of adrenaline. And I would say the difficulties, and I'm very, very spiritual, and it probably drove me more into my spiritual self, because I was like, okay, this is how you deal with things, is with spiritual self. Is it just, it makes things more difficult to do. And I'm not a negative person, so it's not like some negativity thing. It just makes things harder, or it makes life feel harder when your progesterone is off. I've had my progesterone balanced off for quite some time now, through nutrition, and I'll get into some nutritional stuff. But it just makes things harder to succeed, or harder in dealing with life. That's all. You have to do more. So, and that's the way all the hormone doctors explained it to me, and I've definitely experienced that. So in breaking generational patterns, you definitely want to get very real, get very honest, and do research, and find some experts to balance out your chemistry and the hormones, and taking out the sugar. Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Just like a cocaine addict that grows up on cocaine, they have to remove the cocaine, and then they can start really progressing in their life. And food does not make your brain weird like cocaine does, but it just has other things that we don't like in our life. And if you're watching this video, you probably have a list of things you don't like that possibly is coming from food habits. And our chemistry is part of passing this down. So chemistry, understanding, being able to profile yourself with stress, with cortisol, with hormone imbalances, like history trends. If you have a history in your of diabetes or other types of dis-ease in your family, right? These are all the historical things we want to look at, right? Because those genes, the chemical patterns get passed down, the genetic weaks and strengths, as well as certain thought processes or just habits, unconscious habits, because you grow up with your family, right? And so in years 1 through 5 are the most programmable years of a person's life, and 5 through 15 are the next stages. So, and one of my favorite books was by this PhD who went on how those patterns are created. So repetitious thought and habit through the brain. So if we want to break those patterns, we have to spend time in new repetitious thought and habit, but giving recognition that we got those generationally, or even from the marketing and the media, right? Because some of them aren't just generational. We have 300 years of processed food, which kind of went in there and started affecting all the people. And then we have generations in comparison to that, into what's going on in society, and then what habits your family just naturally started to do. So you have to start eating differently, Okay, you have to start thinking differently. You have to start eating differently. And you have to start training differently. Okay, so eating differently. And if you've struggled with doing the full conversion, I'm gonna say just start somewhere. Just start somewhere. And when you start somewhere, immediately start living in the benefits, okay? And that goes back to thought process, okay? Immediately start, even if you're not achieving everything you want at that time or doing everything, only stay in the benefits. If you stay in the benefits, you will create more benefits, okay? If you get into the punishment discipline, you're gonna take yourself right back into past behaviors, okay? So it's super, super important, okay? 80% of our results comes from our nutrition. And I'm very big on the stepping stone where we just start ingraining stuff in. Because lifestyle means life on life's terms. We don't want the event type format. People have mastered events. So statistically, on paper, what people have been doing and been able to do, they've been able to master spending money on things that help them nutritionally with weight loss or health. And they've mastered getting results from them, but they failed at creating a lifestyle. Okay, the percentage that actually leads into a lifestyle is extremely, extremely low. Okay, and these are the percentages. So 10% of the population is said to master a lifelong habit of exercise. Okay, out of that 10%, 75% never reach the goal they really, really want, what's in their mind. So that's where the deficiency is, right? And so this video today is helping to uplift and edify that 75%. The 75%, and it's multifaceted why they're not, but it's the confusions and addictions in foods. Confusions and addictions in foods. Confusions and addictions in foods. So, okay, and I believe the exercises is close to 12 to 15%. But okay, so the confusions and addictions and foods, right, has 75% of the people not reaching the goal in their mind. Out of the 25% that do, 90% of them are working with a professional, right? And they're getting good information, and they're keeping consistency. They're keeping a pace, right? I've worked with people for over 26 years, and so it's not about hitting your formula for 1 week. It's about hitting it on a consistent basis, okay? And what we really want to do yes, it's nice if we can stop everything and just revamp our whole life right now and like we just redid our closet and move forward, but most people don't have that luxury. So you just have to start voting now. Just start shifting now. Just do this instead of that. Take your breakfast and your lunch and start changing that out, okay? Start lowering the addiction. Really give full recognition to the sugar, because sugar is not mental or emotional. You'll never be able to control it. Just like a cocaine addict can never control how addictive the cocaine is, okay? And sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, okay? Companies spend billions of dollars on food chemists to identify a chemical that when it hits your tongue, it'll have you buy that product for $3 a week the rest of your life. Okay, that's the business model. It's that simple. And for you, you're like, oh, it's no big deal, $3. Oh, I just got some enjoyment. And there is enjoyment in the food. Okay, I'm going to tell you right where the enjoyment is. And this is not something to feel have a negative emotion about or feel guilty about. It's just the way it is. And this can be used to your advantage too if organized correctly. But the reason what's happening with the food when it hits your tongue, when you hear it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine, it really has to do with the size of the molecules. So if you took a protein molecule, right, and say a protein molecule was maybe double-sized my head, like this size, right? If a protein molecule was that big, right, then a complex carbohydrate like a yam, like a fibrous low digestion might be the size of the end of my thumb cap, right there, right? And then a simple sugar, like from a candy bar, a processed one, not a natural one from a fruit, like from a sugar, it might be 30 times smaller than this little pen cap, okay? So when we take those big, huge, those different sizes, right, and carbohydrates and saturated fats, so you adjust the mouth, As soon as that pizza or that ice cream or that fill in the blank touches the tongue, it shoots through the system and it explodes, and it's so small and it moves so fast. And because it's so fast, our mouth gets stimulated and it has a party in our mouth, okay? So the most euphoric feeling you can feel in the entire world is the processed carb, fat, sugar combination. Those three things, that's a pizza, that's an ice cream, that's a breakfast cereal. The most euphoric feeling in the world. It gives complete euphoria, more than any legal or illegal drug, and even more than an orgasm, okay? So that's what these little food chemists have been up to, and they have figured out, and they figured out in multi-different ways. Okay, that's all chemistry. That has nothing to do with your character, your personality, your will, your drive, or your missions in life. That is just pure chemical. Okay, and another added part to that chemical part, when you're driving down, okay, these are all things to give full recognition to. When you give full recognition to the power of something, you say, gosh, I can't control that. And when you know you can't control it, then you do different behavior so it doesn't control you. That recognition, law of recognition. So, but when you're driving down at lunchtime, right, and you're smelling those aromas, you're smelling the aromas. Here's the chain. Here's the chain that the companies are betting on. That's in their timeline for having you buy that lunch for $15 or buy this. If you have the chemical in your body, whatever your chemical is, whether it's actual sugars and sweets, whether it's tortillas, whether it's breads, whether it's ho-hos, whether it's cereal, whether it's the Subway sandwich that's marketed as a weight loss product, or anything, these high glycemic breads, that whole bread aisle, any of these things, if you have those chemicals in your body, in the body, and you're driving down the street and you smell the aromas, it's gonna trigger your addiction. It's going to trigger that chemical in your body, and you're going to think about that tortilla. You're going to think about that candy. You're going to think about whatever it is that you were generally doing in your lifestyle. Okay, and you didn't, and you were just driving down the street, but all the restaurants let out an aroma. It's very powerful. It calls to you. Okay, so I'm a big advocate on becoming sugar-free and bread-free. Okay, I have not eaten bread. Well, I shouldn't say I have not eaten bread. I've hardly eaten any. I mean, it's maybe been a handful in the year. And really, when you lower the chemical down in your body, this is one of the advantages. Okay, when you really knock this chemical out of your body. When you knock the chemical out of your body, then when you smell it or you see it, you actually stop becoming attracted to it. Isn't that cool? Like, what if you're only attracted to the things that give you what you want? Isn't that cool? You can actually do that. I've done that myself, and I've helped many people do that over the past 26 years. And that's what makes it easy to live in that's what breaks generational patterns, is when things are easy. Generational patterns don't get broken when it feels impossible to do, when it's unrealistic to do, when you don't have the time, when you don't have the mindset, when you don't have the desire, or you don't have these different things. Okay, but and that's where, going back to understanding your lane, okay, if you're looking over here on all these other things that are not mastering your body and food and how this line works, it's not going to work. So if what you're doing is not working right now, it's not your lane. And the proof is in the pudding. Okay? If I put a financial plan together for you and it didn't work, it did not work. If something is not working, it is not working. If something is working, it is working. Okay? And these are two things that I see get switched all the time. Something can be completely working, and somebody does not know how to give recognition to it and say, oh my God, it's working. I'm going to live in the benefits. I'm going to just sit there and keep focusing on how this is working and get it working more. Right? Or something is not working and somebody keeps saying, well, gosh, all these things need to change so this can work. All these things out there in the world need to change so this can work. Just like saying, well, money needs to change so that it works for me. I'm not going to go out there and master money and the flow of money. I'm going to expect money to change so that I can get money in my bank account. Is that going to happen? No. And neither is food. Food is going to be food, and fake food is going to be fake food. So what you want to do is master your lane. You want to study. You want to research everything and rightly divide the truth. That's 2 Timothy 2:15. And there's power in that. There's super power in that. And you could sign up for this channel because I'll load you full of information. That's what this channel is about, is just loading people up and edifying them to reach their goal. Okay, so really you want to master the feminine and the masculine energy. There is a difference between men and women. They have strength, but we both have masculine and feminine energy, okay? And they really have different powers, but when they're out of balance, it can actually make it super hard for us to master our nutrition. Again, master your lane, master you, master who you are. If you have a chemical imbalance, if you have a thought imbalance, or you have an exercise imbalance, okay? The most simplest things we can do as humans is think, eat, and move, okay? And I'm going to talk a lot about those subjects on this channel. So if you want to master them, like and subscribe. If you want help with a plan, send me an email. Okay, so, all right, training. Okay, this is, we're gonna get into training. So women have to also train differently, okay? We have to do things differently in the thought process, we have to do things differently in the food, and we have to do things different in the training, okay? So female spines are a lot smaller than male spines. Our shoulders are built differently. And we have a different set of hormones. Okay, so I would say those are probably, there's probably some other things, but those are the major things that make it different for men and women. Okay, and women, as they're getting up in strength, a lot of times their legs will get way stronger than their upper body can handle, or different vice versa. Whereas as men, they're built to actually, they're more built for labor. You know, they have all this muscle and you know, that's just more built for doing things physically. And historically in time, you know, again, it goes back to that egg and the sperm. Women are really, really wired to make a baby and take care of a baby and caregive for like a family. And men are really, really wired to protect that family and go out and find the food and all the stuff to feed that family and protect it. So there's a natural ground wire in that historically in time, even though we've kind of, you know, industrialized and did all these things down the timeline. The original formula will always exist and always play a role. And there's strength in understanding that history. Even if you want to do things a little bit different nowadays, there's strength in understanding that history and mastering the flow of your lane, okay? So, and how you know you're mastering the flow of your lane is things are working, okay? If things are not working, then something is off, okay? Either it's the wrong information or the way it's being implemented is wrong, okay? So female spines, though. So females do have to train very differently than men, okay? And I've helped a lot of women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s completely revamp their body, okay? When they're training in the weights, it is highly beneficial to get up to high threshold in weights, but it can take some time to develop the form and the different like form habits to be able to lift those weights in a safe manner, okay? I have a whole form-based system actually that takes people through a reprogramming process to really solidify different forms, because we don't come out of the womb with good form. It's something we have to train and we have to develop. And it's a very boring, tedious process also, okay? I know there's a lot of different overhead type, squatting type stuff, I think in CrossFit. Physically, that's safe for a man, the way a man's shoulders is built, but women, they should not be holding up weight above their head with a wide angle. That really starts putting different pressures on the spines, okay? And I would really, really be cautious on any load on the shoulders for females. You don't need to get into these heavy weights to get results. It's hard for me to give general advice for weight training or training like this, because people are very, very different. And some people you train with real high reps at a lighter weight. Some people you get in these high thresholds. And these ones, most people are over here in these high thresholds, but it takes a little bit of training to get into these forms. But you actually end up reprogramming. It helps to prevent injuries too. So that's some other pluses. But a good weight training program is super, super powerful. Okay, and I think weight training is more powerful than any other form of training for two reasons. If you get trained properly, it's the safest for injury prevention. Okay. Because you don't have to perform. You're not trying to move a ball or interact with a bunch of other people's actions or go for a certain amount of time in a race. There's not all these things that you can customize it, the whole entire weight training sequence of routine of exercises to that specific person's muscular spot where they're at. Okay, so there's no combining with all these other things going on that you have to do, okay? And I have 26 years experience in exercise science, sports nutrition, and that goes into two areas: doing, performance athlete, runner, basketball player, all that, and appearance, right? I want to look great and be healthy, okay? Most people are actually in this category. There are some people over here, but I also find that there's a lot of people that should only be over here that are also in this category, okay? And that ends up giving them the wrong training program and can prolong results, okay? And the other part is injury prevention, okay? And if you're doing too many of these, that can increase the risk of injury. And then weight training is the lowest form of injury if you're doing it properly. If you're with somebody that if you're learning in a way that you're not learning proper form, the risk of injury is still just as high. The risk of injury the first 6 weeks, anybody's in any fitness program, whether it's running, swimming, or weight training, it's 60 to 70% chance risk of injury because of learning techniques, learning the form, right? Learning techniques, and muscle imbalances, tight and weak muscle imbalances because you've been non-active, okay? My two major injuries were right after taking a break, okay? And I'm very trained in training, but the mind says, I'm used to doing this, but the body says I'm here. So you always have to reintroduce yourself. But weight training has the lowest risk of injury, okay? And women, I feel they have a higher risk of injury than men, just because of their spines and the way that their body is built, and they can't take loads the same way, where men can take more loads because they normally have more muscle. So I do weight training. I would say if you're somebody that's just trying to be healthy and fit and don't have a lot of time, like you're a busy business professional that needs something that's also time efficient, weight training is going to be the safest. It's going to save you the most amount of time and give you the most amount of results. Okay, so you just want to get that organized properly. And if you need help with that, you can send me an email. I have I have a whole profile out system for most demographics. The only demographic I really don't is really the extreme high-end performance athletes in performance and the real extreme bodybuilders. I don't do any of the extreme bodybuilders. But most all the other demographics I have, if you're busy or whatever, I have some solutions. But weight training also increases the serotonin levels, okay? So all of this stuff, just really combining it together is really gonna supercharge you and help break generational patterns. And you wanna think about that at the same time, okay? You wanna think about that, okay? I actually think about that in my own family. With my own family, I think of all things, and I love my family to death. And we have all these good, bad, and neutral things that get passed on generational wise. And from a young age, that's one of the reasons I got into health and fitness. First I saw, oh gosh, I'm having these issues from these foods. I can't eat, and I shouldn't say foods, I should say fake foods, from the processed foods. That's when I really realized how what was going on with these processed foods. And I wanted a different lifestyle, number one, but I also wanted to break generational patterns in my life and in other people's lives. Okay, so if you want to break generational patterns, I definitely join this channel. I'm just going to keep going over different subjects, and you can actually also submit subjects if you want to hear some different ones. But weight training, I would say, is one of the lowest risk of injuries. Okay, so another benefit of the weight training, it actually activates both hemispheres of the brain. Okay, so, and that's something very commonly described as the runner's high. Okay, but you can actually recreate that in other different types of forms of training, and it activates both hemispheres of the brain at the same time. So all of these things wrapped together, they really help just with creating new patterns. Okay, and you want to, just like financial planning, people always get, their brain turns off when it comes to financial planning. It's like it's boring, only certain people really get stimulated by it, or whatever, but you have to do it to succeed. Okay, the food is the same way. I would recommend being okay with being boring. I would get excited about being boring. I would get excited about being a woman. Okay, the women, the caregivers, and I feel like it's biological too. I feel like biologically, even if people aren't talking in this way, it's just like people know that women are caregivers. You know, that's why, I mean, everybody has a mother, right? Everybody has a mother. So every person will kick into that fact that the woman is the caregiver. Mm-hmm. So, and if your mother wasn't that caring growing up, and you had that experience, and there is actually a lot of people that have had that experience. I mean, when you get out there and you start listening to people talk, it's almost like we've had an entire generation of people that maybe didn't have that great of an experience growing up with either parents or both parents. So that's an important thing to heal. Okay, how you grew up is not your fault, and you don't want to attach to it. And sometimes it can live throughout our life, right? It's not so you want to let go of any blame stuff with that. But it is your job to heal, is to take steps in breaking the generational patterns of whatever. And if you did have some of those things where you feel like, there was some imbalance, that's going to affect your masculine and your feminine energy right off the bat. And it's going to screw up the sequence of them. And then the next step is healing to put it back to balance. Okay, so if you do identify with that, start doing research or join this channel. I'll be talking about different stuff or whatever. You want to balance out those thought processes, right? We want to balance out the thought processes that fuel the generational patterns, and not reconciling, because our flesh and blood is our flesh and blood. They are like no other person in this world, not even a lover or a friend or whatever. This is your flesh and blood. Your family is actually your flesh and blood, okay? And it's super, super important to have a reconciliation and peace and forgiveness with them, no matter what the situation. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to have a conversation. You don't have to get a reply back. But your emotion and your vibrational frequency and you need to be reconciled. That's an important part of breaking the generational patterns and moving forward. Because then you're letting go, and you're letting go of the past, and it makes room for new, okay? And I've been doing lifestyle change and lifestyle transformation for over 26 years. Things that are new are not the same. Things that are new are not the same, okay? So there are things that we have to, and that's one of them. Okay, that's a huge, huge one. And there's so much information, so many people talk about that. It must be evolutionary. Like, I mean, on just that. But that the product of that, if you don't have a forgiveness or a connection that's healed with your parents, you have to heal it. You have to heal it. And you have to be in forgiveness. But you don't have to talk them to do it. Okay, and it's going to release a bunch of stuff. Okay, and it's going to open up the door for all the stuff I've been talking about in this video. It's going to open up the door for all of this. Because what happens, this is what happens when you're not letting it go. Your mind is staying there. And it's saying it over and over and over and over. Okay? And it's true. Whatever the message is, it's true. But we need to go into a new pattern. And the new pattern will not have room. It won't have anywhere to go if this one is still going. Okay, so really doing some healing, or if you need, and some people need to go do therapy too. Therapy is a good thing, or sometimes it's just inner work, or sometimes it's just recognition. There's different layers, but whatever it is, I would just embrace it for whatever it is, and know that something good is going to come out of you healing. And the cool thing about healing is when you heal something, it actually goes away. It actually does work. And it's no longer driving the bus. And then you get to actually choose a new thing to drive the bus. So if you're like, well, I want clean eating to drive the bus. I want my new body to drive the bus. I want my exercise to drive the bus. I want my new mindset to drive the bus. It's going to have an opportunity to drive the bus because we're taking the driver out. Because we're saying, okay, that had a purpose, but I don't like the result of that driving anymore. I don't like it. So I'm going to change it. So super, super important, that healing process, because that really throws off the masculine and feminine energy. And so, all right. Okay, you guys. Well, join my 30-day challenge. That'll help to get you kick-started on some clean eating, your own clean eating journey. I'm super excited you join my channel. Hit the like and subscribe. And if you have any topics you'd like me to speak about, let me know. Check out my testimonies on the front of the page too. I have a bunch of ridiculous testimonies out there of just people achieving everything they want through clean eating and regular exercise and lifestyle development, mind development. Okay, so have a good day. Bye.